Join us today on Beyond the Lair, where we have a conversation with Leah Coss, co-founder of Build a Biz Kids program, teaching youth ages 6 to 14 about entrepreneurism and life skills. Leah talks about her journey, her why, and the impact that instilling confidence in youth can make. Hello, everyone. My name is Gina Jackson Montgomery, and we are Beyond the Lair.
And I'm Dean Montgomery.
And we would like to welcome an amazing colleague and friend, Leah Coss. She is co-founder of Build a Biz Kids and founder of BBK Network. Leah Coss is a visionary leader revolutionizing education by equipping youth with essential skills, hands-on experience, and a growth mindset so they can thrive and rapidly evolve in this world. As the co-founder of Build a Biz Kids and founder of BBK Network, Leah leverages her extensive background in franchise systems to develop scalable, cost-effective learning models that reach even the most vulnerable demographics. Her innovative approach to programming combines advanced learning methodologies with strategic collaborative partnerships to maximize and impact and foster a culture of growth and inclusion. Wow. Welcome to the program, Leah.
Apologies for all the long words and tongue twisters in there.
That is an excellent bio, and we're so pleased to learn more about you. But first and foremost, I would like to tell everyone how we met and how our path crossed. Ryan St. Germain, which is also in this podcast series for the next 5 weeks, introduced us. And funnily enough, you and Ryan have really never met.
Just on Zoom.
Just on Zoom. And the way that networking works, as we know to all of our listeners, is somebody knows somebody. And if they don't think that there's a fit, they can introduce somebody to somebody. And we are those somebodies. So we have a equal commonality, Dean, myself, and yourself, is that we love to teach kids about entrepreneurism. We love to see the future leaders of tomorrow make impactful, informed decisions based on education and real life experiences. And we do different things. We have the Bearsler Kids Camps where we teach Indigenous youth 11 to 18. And you teach all cultures of youth about entrepreneurism. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure. So Build a Biz Kids is a registered Canadian charity. And on the surface, in terms of what we do, yes, we teach kids as young as 7 how to start and launch their first business, but we call it really future-ready skills. We teach them everything from public speaking to digital literacy skills and so much more, and it really is throwing them into real-world hands-on experiences, and that's where those human essential soft skills start to get cultivated. But while that's great, the world is moving fast. What digital literacy is today is going to be very different 10 years from now when they graduate, because our age group is kind of like the prequel to you. We're like 7 to 14 years right now. And so while those are great and it's something every parent wants their kids to learn, it's what teachers want to teach and it's what kids get excited about. Really what we're trying to do is build better humans. And what I mean by that is we want to cultivate those human essential soft skills, things like resiliency, confidence, decision-making, empathy, leadership, self-awareness, all those human skills you cannot learn in a book. You must flex them in real-world situations. And we do that because by the time they reach those pivotal years, which is around 13, 14 years of age or grade 8 or 9, those are those indicator years when they start to have attitude changes or struggle or friends groups change. Maybe their grades fall. That means that they're kind of at a high risk point of facing some sort of mental health challenge. And right now, youth under 25 have the highest rate out of any age group of mental health difficulties, as high as 1 in 3 by some studies. And we include things like anxiety. And so at this stage, we look at prevention over intervention with that. And our goal is for kids to get exposed to so many real world experiences that flexes these human skills that by the time they reach those pivotal ages, they can validate their own self-worth from the inside, therefore not needing external validation to confirm that they're a valuable human. Even, their parents, as much as they want to say you're an amazing kid, you have so much to offer. Kids become parent deaf. They go, you have to say that, right? And so then they rely on things like their coaches and their teachers, their peers, and even those that are out of our control, strangers, when they're standing in line at a grocery store, makes an offhand comment that can impact that child for years. The media, social media, all these things we don't have control over. So our goal is to create humans that love themselves, believe they're capable, and create those core memories at a young age so that as they navigate their teenage years and beyond and face things that we all can't help but face, that hit us straight on, they've got those coping skills, they've got that validation that they can thrive through them.
That's amazing. We actually have two teenagers that are 13 and 14 years old, are right at that pinnacle age of friendships and that transition with school, et cetera. And they're lucky enough to be able to attend a few of our camps to learn those types of life skills. It's incredible what you're doing. But let's rewind. And we always like to say, before you tell us what you do, tell us why you do it. And now we know what you do. Let's go back in time to the little Leah, about how you grew up, where you grew up, and what motivated you to move towards this.
You know, it's interesting. When myself and the co-founder started this, it just seemed like a really cool thing to do. Like, people comment. The number one comment, in fact, that we get is, I wish I had this when I was a kid, right? And I'm like, that's why we started it. We wish we did, right? It's now been about 7 years that the charity's been operating. And the more I reflect, I'm actually understanding what that internal voice was that was saying, you have to do that, because I was one of those terrible teens. I changed schools 10 times. My parents divorced when I was 4, not a uncommon story. It was not a friendly divorce. But then I encountered step parents on both sides, one that was very cruel, abusive, and things of that nature, and had a big impact on me. And I grew up just feeling like I didn't have anyone advocating for me. I felt like my parents were making decisions that weren't necessarily with my interest in mind. I felt like I had lost a lot of trust with the adults in my life. And so when I hit that pivotal age of 13, 14 years of age, I started making my own decisions, and they were pretty terrible. So I mentioned that I changed schools 10 times. Some of that was because I was getting myself deliberately kicked out of school. I was actually called in to do a bit of a panel, if you will, a bit of a survey with a city who was looking at gang violence and prevention. And they were listing off all of these things that high-risk youth have. And they were like, criminal activity of, stealing and theft and breaking and entering and doing drugs and, listed off all of these things. And I'm like, oh no, I've done all of those. Like, I got tattoos when I was 15 that were homemade, did drugs, sold drugs, eventually wasn't living at home anymore. And just making decisions that didn't serve me. And it's interesting because there was this moment when I was with a boyfriend. I had just gotten kicked out of school and went to a school that, in fact, you only take one course at a time. So I had fallen behind a lot. This was the second or the last half of grade 11. And I'll mention as well, I'd been both bullied and the bullier. Every time I changed school, I'd put on a new persona. Well, I'm going to be the bullier this time because I got bullied last time, right? And I'd been just penned up this anger inside of me. And I think it was because I overheard a conversation about me as opposed to someone having the conversation with me that my defenses were down. And they said, it was actually the mother of my boyfriend talking to him saying, you two just aren't good for each other. And I don't know what it was about that, but I was like, all of a sudden, it's kind of like, when someone has an addiction and they go, I had this moment of clarity and I was like, this isn't serving me anymore, right? And it's about, I realized in that moment, that was my moment of clarity and I didn't know why. But all of a sudden, my younger self flashed before my eyes. When I was young, and granted, in the abusive household, I had a stepbrother and we were only about 11, 12-ish. He was a year older than me. And I remember we loved money. I don't know why. We just loved it. I saved every dollar of my allowance. Now, I loved saving money. He loved spending money. So I used to have to hide my money because he'd try to find it. But we were this was like latchkey kid era too. So we were taking buses by ourselves and it must have been his idea, but all of a sudden we were going to flea markets. Like, I used to joke, if it wasn't nailed down in the house, we were taking it to the flea market and selling it. And he had this terrible knitting machine that would knit these god awful scarves. And I would make gift boxes out of old holiday cards. And we just sold whatever we could. And here we are, just these tiny kids by ourselves at a flea market, which was primarily seniors, booting around selling their old stuff. And I felt so powerful. I was making my own money. I was talking to strangers. We got there by ourselves unless our parents needed to drive us to drop stuff off, but they were just leaving us there and then coming back at the end of the day. And that core memory it wasn't the memory, it was the feeling I had there, which was, you're capable. You can literally make your own money. You can travel if you need to get away from a situation. You can talk to strangers. You can navigate this big world, and it's so much bigger than this bubble you're living in right now. So whatever it was about that conversation, as soon as my boyfriend came upstairs, I broke up with him. And I said, this isn't right. And so grade 12, I went back into it. I left the other school, went back to the regular school system, had 2 jobs, got my driver's license, bought a car, took an extra course during lunch hours and managed to graduate on time. And the rest was kind of history. Now, I still had some mental health difficulties through that, but I was able to cope because of this core belief about who I was. And I remembered all the goals and dreams that I had as this young child that felt like they were taking over the world, even though they were just selling at small flea markets. So that memory, I've now come to realize, when we have these experiences, and of course, for me, the entrepreneurial one really resonates. When I see these kids as young as 7 launching businesses, we have a rule at all of our markets. Parents are not allowed at their child's booths. It scares them initially, but then they realize, wow, look at them go. Like, look at them make change. Look at them hear no from a stranger and just bounce back from it like it was nothing. That is that memory, that experience. I want these kids to have these core experiences and beliefs in themselves about their capability, about their value, about what they can do. So if they should need to have that wake-up call, that thing that, if they do fall into a bad crowd, if something like that happens to them and they have that moment of clarity that, yeah, it's time for a change, but I don't know what the change could be, they can reflect back and go, it doesn't matter, I've got the skills. Let's just do something different today.
That's amazing. So what did you, when you went through that, right? And then tell us what happened between that time in your life and then opening BizKids. Were you working for others? Were you an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I went to college. I figured out what it was that I needed to do in order to get there. So grade 12 was a very strategic year of making sure I get my C pluses as my bare minimum in certain programs. Went to BCIT, which is a fantastic technical school. And when I got out, I had the dream job. It really literally was. 1-800-GOT-JUNK was the it company. They put what culture is to us today. They invented it, in my opinion. And everybody at BCIT in my age group wanted to work there. I remember showing up to the interview and it was all people I graduated with. And I got the role of a lifetime. What I appreciate about Brian back then is he didn't care about titles. And what I mean is all of us had manager in the title, So straight out of college, I was a franchise development manager. I was selling franchises to grown-ups because I was only like 22 or 3 at the time, selling a franchise for hundreds of thousands of dollars to someone in Florida. And man, I'm making lots of money, doing awesome things, living in this beautiful culture. The thing is my ego got away from me and I decided to leave and I started my own business thinking, on paper, I'm even more equipped than the rest of these people. I went to business school. I'm selling businesses. I'm working for one of the greatest companies in the world. And I started my first business. And after 4 years, sold it, which sounds great, but I was left with a lot of debt. And so, I still, like I said, had my ups and downs, but I never, ever thought of giving up on myself. And so franchising's been a core fundamental part of what I do. I've coached and consulted for many companies in many different industries. And BizKids started because my partner at the time, he had a 8 or 9-year-old son who came home really upset that his peers and other classes at his school got to start a business and his class wasn't doing it. And we thought, let's do this, right? And so we did. And it started as an accident, as a part-time hobby. took only about a year. We started it in 2018. By the end of 2019, I had quit my consulting job. And of course, that was embarking upon COVID, but which is a whole other fun story. But yeah, I decided to just go all in. At that point, I still couldn't describe why. It just really resonated with me. It filled my cup in a way I had never felt before. And I realized this can be bigger. And, to speak to COVID, aside from everything that happened economically and health-wise in the world, it gave me pause to then put all of my consulting and my franchise experience and look at a charity model, which traditionally you don't look at in that way. And I thought, what we're doing is not scalable. If we're really going to impact mental health, if we're really going to impact the economy, the economics, the skill labor gap, the fact that employers are feeling like youth are coming out of school not equipped with the skills that they need. I mean, you look at the Forbes and LinkedIn top 20 list of skills that they want or that employers want, and 19 or 18 out of 20 of those skills are human skills, those soft skills, right? They're not technical anymore. So it's really important that we reach the masses. And I thought if we're going to do this, we've got to change up the strategy. We can't just be running one-off programs. We've got to figure out how we reach kids where they already are, which is the public school system, public libraries, nonprofits, in their small communities and their big communities and beyond, the homeschooled community. How do we put it in their hands? And just coming off of, 2024, we grew by 15x in 15 months. And we grew not just out of the Lower Mainland here in BC, but we're in the craziest remote communities I've never even heard of before. Apologies if you live there, but I'd never heard of Greenwood and Lanceville. We're in, of course, 100 Mile
I grew
House.
up in Lanceville, by the way.
Did you really?
So, yes.
I had no idea where it was on the map. But we're also now in, across Canada. We're in Alberta, Ontario, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. And so our goal moving forward is we want to grow by 10x over the next 2 years. So by the end of 2026, which means 500 communities across Canada. We're in about 50 right now. And we've got the method to get there. We just need the right strategic partners and the funding to be able to do it as a charity, because we don't want to charge the educators to do this. And how we've got it laid out is very cost effective. Like the number of kids that we're able to reach compared to what we were able to do on our own is mind blowing. I get excited because my core is franchising. And yet I love our mission. And so I get equally excited and giddy about the strategy as well as the impact.
You've got a really really great model. And I know when you and I met, you're very franchise oriented and you're scalable. And when we're talking, you said about the Bears there with Dean and I, specifically you and I, talking about, how can you put this online, right? So that you can maybe provide this to more communities. And what we provide in our camp is you really have to be there because it's about connecting and it's about that, and reaching the masses in a digital world is also a possibility as well. But you've kind of got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell our audience, if you can explain, you have the Solarpreneur program, to explain a little bit about what that is, but also what you do with the malls, because Dean and I have both volunteered. We've been customers. Actually, the last time I was a volunteer, I think I spent $400 at every single booth, because I just think, and maybe explain a little bit about the numbers and the statistics of the traffic that was at Brentwood Mall that just absolutely was mind blowing. So,
yeah. So, we've definitely been able to optimize the digital landscape, right? Being able to do that just allows you to do things less expensively. But I agree, you have to have that human component. You have to have the in-person situation. We also recognized, I think as an organization, as a charity or a for-profit, you also need to know what you cannot do. And what we cannot do is relate to those who live in, say, remote communities, or relate to those who are for myself. I was born in Canada. I can't relate to a group of newcomers who speak multiple languages and come from multiple backgrounds. I can't relate to growing up on a First Nations community and the landscape and what it is that they want to do with their lives or impact on the world. And so what we've done is we've been able to utilize technology in order to distribute and teach and empower the leaders, the community members who do have all those things, right? They've lived and grown up in those communities. They work with these kids every single day. They know their backstories. They know their struggles. They have educators there to work with kids with learning abilities or physical abilities or different lived experiences. So we are all about still providing that in-person real world experience. Theory is great to a degree, but at the end of the day, it's got to be relevant and it's got to be applicable to not just the real world, but the kids' real worlds.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing at your markets, when you go talk to the kids, I mean, to our listeners, these kids they're not shy, or if they are, they come out of their shell, right? And then there's lots of confidence, and they're not just going to talk, but they're going to sell and push, and they have incredible products, and the independence they have by not having the parents there is, to me, the most amazing part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you could walk us through that, because when you and I met, I was talking about we teach kids 11 to 18. You're like, oh, that's too old for what we do. And I was like, too old? What, are you kidding? And you're like, oh yeah, we teach kids 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old about, when kids are still coloring about this. And you've actually got to see it to believe it. Because, I can look on the internet, buildabizkids.com, and take a look at and I signed up right away for the program just because I just wanted to know more about it. And it's actually kids teaching kids.
Yeah.
But you do have the program where the kids that are in your program, that a lot of them you've seen grow up, that have taken your courses and then come to Brentwood Mall or Lougheed Mall twice a year and just build up their inventory. And maybe tell us a little bit about that and the type of businesses. And then you, at the very beginning, talked a little bit about what's the setup, and tell our listeners and viewers the rules about these kids.
Sure.
And the amount of participants, because that's what always blows me away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we like to empower the community. So because of that, we call a community where there's a community leader that's going to run the programs, and they run markets in their own community. So there's so many markets going on, BizKid markets across Canada that I have not even seen. We get to see little bits of photos of, and it's amazing. But what we wanted to do was, what happens when the child takes that program, but they still have a business and they're like, now what do I do? Where else can I sell? And so we decided that we wanted to create larger BizKid markets where the kids aren't automatically approved. They have to apply. They've got to continue to innovate, continue to evolve. And it's great. Every year we have a waiting list now of kids who want to attend these markets. So right now we have 2 a year, our summer BizKid market and then our Christmas market, held at the Shape Property Mall. So that's the city of Lougheed and the amazing Brentwood Mall. Our last mall was just in November, and we actually got a message from Brentwood saying that they had hit a new all-time record for traffic for the mall during the last weekend of November that they've ever had. And that was well over 12,000 people coming through. Now, we also had a record number of kids. We had over 50 kid entrepreneurs launching their businesses, and they ranged from all kinds of stuff. We had kids who were innovating with 3D printers. So they're learning these new technologies and then creating product around it. We had everything from food products to crochet. Crochet is the new slime. We had to turn away so many crochet applicants because they all wanted to sell. And we're like, we already have 5. So yeah, there's just a wide range. And honestly, when you walk through and look at these tables, I can't help but get a little judgy when I go to a regular farmer's market now, because I'm like, our kids' tables look better than these, and you're grown up, right? I also observed the resiliency. I still laugh at this young girl, Carly. It was our very first market back in 2018 we ever launched. She was selling succulents in teacups. And this kind of elderly person walked up. They had their hands behind their back and this kind of, scrunched up face. And they were just looking at her stuff, grunting And Carly looks and puts her hands on her hips and goes, would you like to learn about my succulents? And they just kind of went, and they shook their head and they walked away. And Carly turns around and puts her hands on her hips and goes, they're grumpy. And then she just carried on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen people crying at farmers markets because they're upset because somebody said something negative about their products, right? And it's that resiliency muscle that we're building at an age when they don't even know what resiliency is. They don't care what people think of them. And that's when we want to be flexing those muscles. So yeah, we do have a few rules. The kids have to apply. So they have to send pictures of their products and what their tables look like. They get a 4-foot table, with exceptions to some kids that can try to get a larger table. Parents are not allowed at the students' booths or the children's booths. Parents, we obviously all have great intentions with our kids. We want to support them, but we don't recognize just how often we rob them of opportunities to learn, because we actually start to feel embarrassed or worried that people are going to judge us if our child doesn't perform. And so, just us standing there, the child knows they can default to you, that you will rescue them. But if you're not there, they stand on their own 2 feet, and they struggle with the first couple transactions. They struggle with what to say. At the summer market, the first one that you came to, Gina, at Lougheed Mall last year, there was a young girl selling headbands that were knit, or crocheted. And so having that at a summer market, nobody wants knitted goods, right? And she was a little, feeling a little down on herself. She hadn't sold too many, but all it took was a sale or two, and she transformed. What's great as well, unlike, say, a typical project in school where we all have to make the same project, right? We need the same volcano, or we need the same whatever it is we're constructing. Kids feel like there's a right answer. But when they look around, they're like, I'm not selling, but you're selling. How come? You have a completely different product, a completely different price point, different product. Even, you're selling twice as much as me, but I've still made more profit than you. Like, the metrics are there's no apples to compare to. They're all apples and oranges and pineapples, right? So the kids are realizing I can make different decisions. I can steal from other kids. Oh, they've got their display like this. Oh, they've got their product listed under $5. Oh, listen to their sales pitch. Okay, I'm going to start doing that too. They're learning and evolving. And by the end of that show, this girl with the headbands was a hustler. She was literally coming up to people going, oh my gosh, I've got the perfect headband that would match your shirt. Let me go get it for you. And you couldn't say no to that. Like, of course, you've just coordinated my outfit for me. Of course I will buy it. Yeah. So this of evolution happens during that market. Wyatt's one other I'll bring up. He had been recommended by a kid who had started again at our very first market in 2018. And so Wyatt was 15 or 16 when he came to the first market. It was 3D printed goods, and he was visibly nervous. He has been given every label that can be given to a child. And so now he's homeschooled, ADHD, dyslexic, et cetera, right? And so very nervous about how he would measure up to these other kids that have been in traditional education or, going to be more confident than me. That one market, he made like $1,000. He did so well. He was the busiest booth there. Between the summer market and our Christmas market, he did 15 other markets all on his own, to the point where now he's not just doing markets and making an average of $1,000 at each one, but he's got people coming up to him saying, can you prototype something for me and then do a small run of 30? So he's now creating this whole 3D printing business, and it all stemmed from him just putting himself out there and doing it once, and it opened up his world. He's since been able to go on our Meet a Dragon event where he met Brian Scudamore from the Dragon's Den. The kid is he's motoring. He's doing incredible.
I actually bought probably $150 worth of things from him at the end of the day.
I have him on my keychain.
Do you? Yeah.
He has him on, it's something that your cell phone can sit on, but he also had this interesting little rabbit where you put your 2 fingers through it, and he has a sister that he was afraid that was walking alone at night, and I can't remember from school or post-secondary or something, and he said, I made this for my sister just in case she ever got attacked. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to order 10 of these, like for my nieces and for whatever. It's actually quite a weapon, but I just absolutely love what I really noticed about the kids at this market as well, was what we lovingly call co-opetition. And that is, one of the girls had at a crochet booth had some cookies, and I said, oh, those look delicious. And she said, they are the best cookies ever, and they are at the booth over there, and I would highly recommend them because they are selling out fast. And it was so nice for them to be able to promote each other, yet it wasn't competition, it was co-opetition. And I know that you have a couple serial entrepreneurs that come, but the confidence in being able to sell something, the confidence in being able to merchandise, public speak, We always do something in our camps called Glow and Grow, and that's where somebody gives you something positive and then gives you some constructive comments, and you learn to accept that. And I think that's something that's organically done when you're in sales as well, because like you mentioned, you can't control somebody's mood, but when somebody, comes up and buys something from you or just doesn't and moves to the next booth, you just move on, because that's the way life is. It's not always about protecting our children, which is what every person does nowadays. Please tell your statistic about the radius of where we, during that, when we used to take buses and go off. Yeah,
I used to work with outdoor playgrounds, right? And we did some in the Suzuki Foundation, and we were talking about our roam rate as kids. And when we were kids in the 70s, it was roughly, I think it was about 5 kilometers. Now it's about 25 meters from home, right? So, and it's just a different world, a different time. So, you don't have that independence, but this really does help build it.
Well, not just independence, like geographically and physically, but we don't want our children to walk to school. We don't want our children to be alone or go to the playground or go to the store by themselves.
And even if you want to, you're shamed when you do, because other parents say you shouldn't do that.
And we want to protect them from being bullied. We want to protect them from, we want to give them everything. And I think it's just, we're setting them up to fail if we don't give them that independence. And I think you're really providing a solution to something that's going to be very problematic in the future, which is social contact and social confidence, and something that this digital world of AI and everything is not going to be able to take over.
So one thing so tell us, when you decided, or was there anything that really triggered you to say, look, I need to start getting into the Indigenous world and be participating with Indigenous communities and youth, or anything like that? Or was it?
From the beginning, I mean, it was always something that we knew was on our radar, because we want to reach everybody, and Indigenous kids are everybody, right? And so we knew we had to do that. We just didn't know how to do it. And we wanted to be respectful in how we did it as well. So while there's a lot of our community partners that have Indigenous youth that attend their organizations, their schools, and things of that nature, we haven't been able to do anything with a direct Indigenous organization. And so meeting Gina, that's why Ryan put us in contact, because I told him, this is on our radar. How do I do this respectfully? Who can we speak with to make sure that if we do provide this, I mean, is our programming even something that's compatible? Is it something that they would respond to? Is it even aligned with the goals of each of the nations? Like, what do we need to do to make some modifications or to elevate it? So meeting Gina has been just incredible. Like, we just were firecrackers the moment that we connected, with our ideas and minds exploding with all the things we can do together. I'm excited to be able to start venturing into older age groups, because you're already serving them. And then likewise, I'm excited for you to help us to create our programs that we already have for the younger age groups with an Indigenous lens. And I think the one that I'm especially keen with is, not that I'm not especially keen for those, but the one that I think that is going to have a significant impact, not just on First Nation communities, but all communities across Canada, is I want to equip educators and everyone who handles all of our programs that are currently out and distributed with a video that's in the beginning of each of our programs that has an Indigenous child talking about themselves and their culture to everyone in the classroom, but also helping through their lens to share. Like, we have so many newcomers in Canada as well, right? We have so many people with stories and different cultures to share. And we don't want them to feel like, if you make a business, if you make slime, cool, do it because you love slime. But is there something else? Like, we have kids, we have Kenzo's Candies, who he's, a portion of his family is from Japan, and these are Japanese candies. And talk about, like, you could just make regular candy, but he's bringing his culture into it. And when you look around this room right now, like, how many incredible things can Indigenous youth be able to look at and say, I can not only love my culture, where I come from, but I can also sustain myself, my community. I can make a positive impact. I can share our message through, whether it be our Kid Talks public speaking or our entrepreneur program. I mean, I'm so excited.
It is. And I think it's all of our, I think our two favorite things about business, or mine anyways, are one, the creativity that you can have, because creativity is how you succeed. And the next is the personal relationships that you develop. Right. And I think that's what gets me out of bed every day for what we do as entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's really exciting to have this partnership, right? To develop a partnership that moves forward, where we can take everything that you've worked for and then everything that we've worked for and collaborate, because it's intercultural. Yes. Teachings, and it's non-trauma informed education. So not going into communities to fix anybody, not taking kids and trying to fix them, but providing opportunities that will elevate kids for the future and provide opportunities. Because in really remote areas where there's only ice roads, where you can only get in by boat and in by plane, many portions and many days of the year, and really isolated communities. And chances are they're not heading out to Vancouver to live. They're going to be staying in their community. So how can you provide opportunities of hope and inspiration and creativity, and do it in the comfort, one, of your own home, or train a facilitator, which is one of the programs that we're talking about, where when we do a camp, and then you can take a program where we provide the resources to a community leader that can keep the good work going, and then really provide that impact. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And, the training, the onboarding, taking the concepts from franchising, how do you hire a 15, 16-year-old in McDonald's, and by the end of the day of their first day on the job, they can make a Big Mac and know the difference between that and a quarter pounder. It's systems. It's understanding how to break things down into simple steps that make it really accessible and easy to understand. And that's what we do. Like, even when you think of the public education system, most educators went to high school, then college or university, and then they started teaching. They've never delivered a TED Talk or started a business or built an e-commerce store or course online, right? And so how do you break this down and make it really accessible? And one thing that I wanted to note that you kind of brought up there is, in our programs, and especially with this younger age group, it's critical that there's a lot of visual engagement, because kids these days are the YouTube generation. They need all of that stimulation. So we've developed a lot of visual engaging tools, including videos, which all feature kids. They feature kids who are teaching kids. They also do a lot of the heavy lifting for the educators, because how do you describe what market research is to an 8-year-old in the context of a business? You don't have to. You're going to have the videos of a 14-year-old Matthew talk about what research is. And so that's a really key component to be able to empower communities. And that also creates long-term sustainability as well, when you don't have to keep going there. For us, we used to run our programs ourselves. We'd have to rent the facility, pay our facilitators, train the facilitators, have the physical materials. I'm speaking exactly, all of this story.
What we do.
Yeah. And it would cost us, just to run one program one time locally, not having to do all the flight and travel that you do, just locally in our backyard, would cost between $3,000 to $5,000 to run one program, which is about, 8 to 10 classes long. Do that one time to maybe 15 to 20 kids. Now, for about the same price or less, we're reaching anywhere from 60 to 220 kids multiple times in a year. It's incredible, the scalability we've been able to have with, I would argue, better impact, because again, it's their own community leaders. It's happening in their own backyard. It's where they already are. So it's also financially accessible. It's free for the kids, right? They don't have to travel in this day and age where most parents are either a single parent or they're both working. It's already where the kids are. If they're already going to the public library, if they're already going to school, if they go to a community center, that's where the programs are being run.
Oh, and I think it's really important. We had a conversation on another podcast, talking to a youth about how kids nowadays, including our own, their phones are attached to, they're literally fused onto their hands, and then they just play video games all day. And as better parents, what can we do to be better parents? And I think that if you have a program like Solopreneur, and if you have programs with like Build a Biz Kids, that maybe that's what you do. It's interactive. It's fun. You have kids teaching kids. Your kids are learning entrepreneurism, and sit them in front of the computer and spend half an hour learning, twice a week, not where you're shoving something down, your child's throat, because we know how that turns into a rebellious nature, but where it's fun and it's passive and you can learn these entrepreneurs.
And they're making their own products.
Yeah, and they're making their own products and getting motivated, because there's nothing more motivating than money that you make yourself. And the earlier you learn it, the more pride is instilled and the more appreciation you have it from your parents. I mean, we give our kids $20 and they lose it 10 minutes later and they're not even concerned.
Yeah.
If I lost $20 when I was young, I still remember losing that money, 40 years later. So let's tie this up, and for all of the listeners and that have kids that are 6 years old to how old to?
Yeah. So, and I really appreciate that you've brought up the solo entrepreneur program as well. You know, we do distribute to a lot of communities, but there's a lot of communities that we're not in, many. And there's also the homeschool community and parents who are taking an approach where they want their children to also have a program they can do at home. So we do have our solopreneur, which is our at-home program that doesn't require a facilitator because the entire thing is voice and video guided. Again, tapping into that stimulus that kids need in that age group. So our primary age group is between 7 to 14, but we have kids as young as 5 because the parents are able to help them through it, taking our programs.
How do parents sign up for this? How do they find out about this? And is there a certain criteria? Because I know that a lot of people that are listening to our program or watching our program right now are saying, what is this? This is crazy. How come I haven't heard about this before? Because it's certainly something when you talked about, I wish I had this when I was younger. We travel all across Canada, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. And we've had sponsors, we've had guests in the audience, all cultures that are just like, this is crazy. Like, why didn't I have this when I was younger? And if I did, I would be where I was today, but 20 years earlier. So how do people find out about it?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I hear that from 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds, but we hire a lot of youth. And when I ask them in our interviews when they're like 20 years old, I'm like, so why did you want to apply? They're like, I wish I had this when I was a kid. I'm like, no, like a 20-year-old is telling me this, right? You were in school yesterday. So the best place to go is to buildabizkids.com. And so if you're a parent and you want your child to have access to a program, you can absolutely get our solo entrepreneur program. We even have courses for parents on how to use growth mindset language and things of that nature as well. But if you are an educator, meaning a teacher, a principal, an administrator of a public school, if you are a program coordinator for a public library or a registered nonprofit or charity, and you want to bring these programs to the youth in your community, our Canadian Future Ready Education Grant, we call it CFREG, it is open right now. So you can actually apply, and if approved and you meet our requirements, you're able to gain access to all of the licensing, all of the programming, the physical materials, the digital materials come straight to your community, and it gets auto-renewed each year. As long as you're using the programs actively and reaching a certain minimum number of kids, you just get auto-renewed, and yeah, it can make a big difference really fast.
Incredible. Yeah.
Right. And your solopreneur program, if I want to buy it for my children, how do I do that? And how much is it?
So you just go online at buildabizkids.com, go to access programs. And actually, I think the main button on that homepage is, get it now kind of thing, learn more. So you can buy it right online. Your child accesses everything online, and it's $45.
Wow.
Yeah.
$45.
$45, I know. And it's a part of our one-for-one program. So as a charity, that revenue helps us to then reach more kids in other communities as well. So you're also doing a pretty good thing.
Wow. So you buy one and then you get one. And then if anyone else is interested in supporting this, because you are a charity and donations are more than welcome to support an initiative like this, had they connect you at the same, they can contact you there.
For sure. Yeah. As a charity, we've got big goals and we're looking to grow quickly. Again, we got to meet reach the masses of the kids quickly to make a big impact on those mental health numbers and the future readiness. So you can go online, you can donate. We are looking for a couple of primary donors as well that want to be the people who help us put the flag in the ground and say, I am going to impact this community, and to have a bigger impact. So if you're interested in looking at that as from a philanthropic impact, or maybe your corporate brand would like to get involved, please let us know. And then with our BizKid events that you mentioned, I'm really excited. We've changed our sponsor package. So now, depending on the level of sponsor you decide to be for these incredibly growing events, we actually give a portion of your sponsor dollars where you get to select a biz kid that you want to sponsor directly as well. And then they can use those funds to help elevate their businesses. Your name gets put right on their table as my business has been sponsored by blank. So I'm really excited to help even the sponsors of events not just have an impact on the event, but actually impact the kids who are attending.
Unbelievable. Great work, Leah. This
you.
is incredibly inspiring. And I know how enthusiastic and passionate you are. And you're the real deal. There is authentic people in this world, and then there is authentic people on steroids. And you are definitely one of them. So thank you so much for sharing with us. If you have a child that is interested in entrepreneurism, if you are a parent and learning more about how that we can relate with our ever-changing children. And if you are somebody that wants to really support this program in educating and elevating and inspiring youth of all cultures, and our Indigenous program that we're collaborating with as well, then you can get a hold of Leah Coss at buildabizkids.com and also us at thebearslairtv.com. So thank you for being with us today. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see what we do together for 2025 and beyond.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Beyond Blair. Please follow us, download this episode, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok.